Japan just built an AI whose only job is to boss around other AIs. It doesn't try to outthink GPT 5.5 by itself. It commands a pool of frontier models like a general commanding an army, and according to its makers, that strategy just beat almost everyone, not by being bigger. By being a better boss. The system is called Sakana Fugu. It dropped on the 22nd of June 2026 from Sakana AI, a Tokyo-based lab. And before you file this under another model bigger than the last one, stop, because that framing is exactly the trap. Fugu is not a new frontier model. It does not have some giant fresh brain that memorized more of the internet than the last one did. Fugu is an orchestration system. Under the hood, it's described as a model trained to call various large language models from an agent pool. You send one request to one API, and behind that single door, Fugu decides which existing frontier models to summon, how to split the work, how to check their answers, and how to stitch the results back together. From the outside, it looks like one model. On the inside, it's a command center. Let me make that concrete, because the mechanics are the whole story. Say you hand Fugu a gnarly task, refactor a chunk of code, and explain the math behind it. A normal model just does its best in one pass. Fugu does something closer to what a smart team lead does. It looks at the request, breaks it into parts, and decides which member of its pool should handle which part. The coding piece might go to the model that's strongest at code. The reasoning piece might go to a different model that's strongest at math. Then it can have those models check each other's work, catch a mistake, and even call itself again recursively when a subproblem needs to be broken down further. It routes, it delegates, it verifies, it synthesizes. The intelligence isn't in any single answer, it's in the choreography. Now let that sink in, because it inverts everything the AI race has been about. For 3 years, the headline has been scale. More parameters, more compute, more data, one giant model swallowing the world. Fugu's bet is the opposite. It says the best models already exist. So the winning move isn't to build a smarter brain, it's to build a smarter manager, a model whose core skill is delegation. And here's the uncomfortable part. On paper, the middle manager is winning. Sakana is essentially arguing that the frontier labs have been leaving performance on the table, that there's a free lunch sitting in the gap between models, and that the way to grab it is coordination, not a bigger training run. Sakana shipped Fugu in 2 flavors, and the split tells you how they're thinking. Plain Fugu is latency optimized, tuned to answer fast. It calls fewer models, takes fewer detours, gets you a strong answer quickly. Fugu Ultra is the max accuracy version, the one that takes its time, calls more models, runs more verification passes, and double checks before it commits. Speed in one lane, rigor in the other. Ultra is the one carrying the headline numbers. So let's look at them, with one giant asterisk. I'm going to keep repeating. Every number you're about to hear is self-reported. It comes from Sakana's own benchmark report. Outlets like MarkTechPost and DataCamp have written it up, but as of right now, there is no independent replication. These are vendor figures. Treat them like a company describing its own product, because that is exactly what they are. With that asterisk planted, the claim is bold. Sakana says Fugu tops 10 out of 11 major benchmarks when measured head-to-head against GPT 5.5, Gemini 3.1 Pro, and Claude Opus 4.8. 10 of 11. Let's make it real with 3 of them. On TWBench Pro, a hard real-world software engineering test, Sakana reports Fugu Ultra at 73.7%. Opus 4.8 lands at 69.2, GPT 5.5 at 58.6, and Gemini 3.1 Pro at 54.2. On Live Code Bench, Fugu Ultra is reported at 93.2% against Opus 4.8 at 87.8 and GPT 5.5 at 85.3. And on Humanity's Last Exam, one of the brutal frontier reasoning tests where even the best models still fail half the questions, Fugu Ultra comes in at 50.0%, just nudging Opus 4.8's 49.8 and clearing GPT 5.5's 41.4. Now read those numbers the way an analyst would, not the way a hype account would. On SWE Bench Pro, the gap is real, several points clear of the next best. On Humanity's Last Exam, it's a fraction of a percent over Opus, basically a tie. Noise level. So, beats GPT 5.5 is true in the sense that Fugu Ultra posts higher numbers, angiocratchers, but the size of that win swings wildly depending on the test. A clean lead in coding, a photo finish in reasoning. That nuance is the first thing that gets flattened when this becomes a headline. And here's the deeper point about what that lead even means. It is not proof that Sakana built a smarter individual model, because Sakana didn't build a smarter individual model. It's evidence that a well-trained orchestrator squeezing the best out of models that already exist can beat any single one of those models used alone. Which, honestly, makes intuitive sense. A great team, led well, can outperform its strongest single member. The real question Fugu raises isn't, is Japan beating America? It's, have we all been underusing these models by treating them as solo acts instead of a team? If the answer is yes, that's a bigger deal than any one benchmark. There's a catch worth naming though, because orchestration is not free. Every time Fugu fans a task out to several models, checks their work and calls itself recursively. That's more calls, more tokens, more latency, and more cost than a single model answering once. That's almost certainly why Sakana split it into two products in the first place. Plain Fugu for when you want speed and a reasonable bill, or Ultra for when you want the absolute best answer and you're willing to pay for all that back and forth. So, even if the Ultra numbers hold, the honest framing is that Fugu is buying top scores with extra compute and coordination, not conjuring them from nowhere. Whether that trade is worth it depends entirely on the job. For a throwaway question, no. For a high-stakes coding task where being right matters more than being fast or cheap, maybe absolutely keep that cost dimension in mind, because the benchmark tables never show it. Now, here's where I want to wave a flag, because this is exactly the kind of story that gets oversold, and I'd rather you hear the skeptical version from me than the breathless version from an aggregator. You're going to see headlines that say Japan's AI crushed Claude, or Japan dethroned GPT. Be skeptical of the slop first, because the numbers are unverified vendor claims, full stop. Second, because of a specific marketing move worth calling out by name. Sakana also says, Fugu stands shoulder to shoulder with Anthropic's Claude 5.5 and Mythos models. Sounds like another scalp. But here's the catch. Those Anthropic models are not in Fugu's agent pool, and they are not in the head-to-head benchmark tables we just walked through. That shoulder-to-shoulder line is a Sakana marketing claim, not a benchmarked apples-to-apples win. So, when you see it repeated as a verified result, that's your cue that someone skipped the fine print. I am flagging it so you don't get fooled by it. And one more thing, this is not. This is a completely separate story from the OpenAI GPT 5.6 and Claude 5.5 drama you've been hearing about lately. Different company, different country, different idea entirely. Don't let the timelines blur together into one mush. Fugu isn't just another entry in the model arms race. It's an argument that the arms race might be the wrong race to be running at all. There's also a geopolitics angle Sakana is leaning into hard, and frankly, it's clever. They market Fugu as delivering frontier capability in their own words without the risk of export controls. Think about why that matters. The most advanced AI chips, and increasingly the most advanced models, live behind tightening export restrictions. If your entire edge comes from owning one giant proprietary model, you are exposed to whoever controls that model and the chips it runs on. But if your edge comes from orchestration, from being the smartest conductor of a swappable pool of models, then you're far less dependent on any single vendor or any single jurisdiction. Models in the pool can be swapped in and out. The orchestration skill is the moat. For a Japanese lab competing in a field dominated by a handful of American giants, that's not just a feature, it's a survival strategy. Sovereignty through coordination instead of sovereignty through scale. So what's the honest takeaway? To strip away the hype, and Fugu is genuinely interesting, and not for the reason the headlines will give you. It isn't the smartest model, it isn't really a model in that sense at all. It's interesting because it's a serious bet that the next leap in AI comes from organization, not raw size. If a manager AI can reliably beat the individual stars, it manages that quietly reshapes how everyone builds. Why pour billions into training one bigger brain when you might be able to train a brilliant coordinator that sits on top of the brains that already exist? That's the real provocation, and it's a good one. But hold the asterisk all the way to the end. Right now, this is Sakana grading its own homework. The benchmarks are self-reported. The flashiest comparison is unbenchmarked marketing, and no outside lab has reproduced any of it yet. The idea is exciting. The receipts are still pending. If independent testers confirm even half of these numbers, the orchestration approach becomes impossible for the big labs to ignore. And if they don't replicate, this becomes a clean case study in why you never take vendor benchmarks at face value. Either way, the concept just got planted in the industry's head, and it's a sharp one. Maybe the future of AI isn't a bigger genius. Maybe it's a better boss. Stay curious. This is AI Unpacked.